You ever get that prescription right and you see that big old folded up paper?
Yeah.
And it's easy to think like, okay, that's it, right?
Yeah.
Like science is done, they figured it out.
It's a common thought for sure, but
Yeah,
it's a lot more complicated than that.
yeah. So that's what we're going to dive into today, right? We're going to look at how those drug labels, the ones,
Yeah.
those drug labels can change even after the FDA, gives it the green light.
Yep. And we've got some really cool stuff to look at today. We've got, guides on how a drug is developed from its very beginnings and then all the way through, like how it works in your body.
Ah, the pharmacokinetic stuff.
Yeah, all the pharmacokinetics, the clinical trials, and all the regulations.
And so basically the whole shebang.
The whole 9 yards.
Our mission today is to figure out why those drug labels, which seem so simple,
Yeah.
aren't set in stone.
Right.
They can change.
They're not just like carved,
Right. And how do we keep making sure that all the meds out there are safe and effective?
Right, exactly.
Okay, so let's get into it. So what's the first thing that could make them change a label after a drug is already out there, like people are taking it?
Well, the initial approval is, it's a huge deal. It's based on a lot of data, mostly from those clinical trials. But the thing is, those trials are really controlled. They use a specific number of patients, and they go for a certain amount of time.
Right, so kind of limited.
Very limited, right. So then when the drug is actually out there, it's used by so many more people with all sorts of different health problems.
Yeah, all sorts of different, lifestyles.
Lifestyles, everything. And that's when, sometimes new info pops up.
Makes sense, right? It's kind of like testing a new phone in a lab versus, like using it out in the world.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like when it's raining, you're juggling groceries, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So it sounds like, that initial approval, it's not the end of this story at all. It's really just the beginning. Okay, cool. So this new information, like what exactly can it reveal? What are we talking about here?
All sorts of things. Sometimes side effects, like brand new side effects that nobody saw in the trials.
Oh.
Or maybe side effects that were already known, but now they're happening way more often than they did in the trials.
Or maybe they're way worse.
Or they're more severe. Exactly. And any of that can lead to, an update to that drug label.
So when we say update, like what kind of update are we talking about? Is it just like changing a word or two, or is it more than that?
Oh, it's way more than that.
Okay.
Like one major one is safety updates.
Uh-huh.
Like if there's new data about some serious risk or, like we said, if side effects are happening more often or they're getting worse, that's going to go right on the label.
Yeah, you definitely want doctors and patients to know about that stuff.
Absolutely. Then there's what we call new indications.
Okay.
So that's when, more trials are done. And it turns out, hey, this drug is also good for something else, something that it wasn't originally approved for.
Oh, that's cool. So, maybe a drug that was approved for, I don't know, like high blood pressure.
Right.
It ended up helping with migraines too.
Exactly. And then there's black box warnings.
Black box warnings. That sounds serious.
Those are the big ones.
Yeah.
Those are the most serious warning the FDA can give.
Wow.
They mean there's a chance, of a life-threatening risk or a really, really bad side effect. And you'll see it right on the label. It's in a black box, so you can't miss it.
Yeah, I guess that gets your attention.
It definitely does, both for doctors and for patients.
That's a little scary to think about that, even after a drug is approved, there could still be something that serious.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's something to consider.
It makes you wonder, like, what does it take for them to issue one of those warnings? I mean, the evidence must be pretty strong, right?
It has to be very strong because it means, that for some patients, the risk might be bigger than the benefit.
Okay, that makes sense. So all of this is part of what they call post-market surveillance, right?
Exactly.
So it's not like the FDA says approved and that's the end of it.
Nope.
They're still watching, even after it's on the market.
It's like an ongoing investigation.
That's pretty reassuring, actually.
And they get info from all kinds of places.
So like what kind of places?
Well, like healthcare professionals, they can report adverse events.
Right, if they see something going wrong.
Exactly. And patients can report them too.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are special studies specifically designed to look at the drug's safety over the long term.
So they're looking at, like, how it works for different groups of people, maybe different doses.
Yeah, all that.
How long the treatment should last.
Exactly. Things that they maybe couldn't see in their shorter trials before approval.
So filling in those gaps, basically.
Exactly.
Wow. So it's a lot of moving parts.
It is.
So, like, if my doctor, let's say, she starts noticing that a bunch of her patients who are taking the same drug, they're all having the same weird side effect
Yeah.
that could actually, like, trigger a review.
It absolutely could.
Wow.
Because that real-world observation is so valuable.
Makes you feel like you're part of the process a little bit.
You are, absolutely.
Okay, so one thing that's important to understand, and you kind of touched on this before, is that when a label changes, it doesn't necessarily mean that something went wrong with the initial approval.
Right.
It's more like we're learning more as we go.
It's more about, our understanding is evolving.
That's good. It's good that it's not, like, set in stone.
It's a good thing. It means the system is working.
Right.
It's working to keep us safe.
Okay, so we know the labels can change. We know why they change.
Right.
Let's talk about what the companies, the drug companies, what are they required to do after the drug is approved to keep all this info up to date?
Good question. It's not just like an honor system, right?
Oh, there's got to be some rules.
There are definitely rules. It usually comes with specific obligations.
Like, what kind of obligations are we talking about?
Well, we call them post-market commitments.
Okay.
You can think of them like conditions that come with the approval.
So they have to do these things.
They got to do them. It makes sure that the company keeps gathering info, after the drug is out there.
Keeps an eye on things.
And they got to deal with any problems that pop up.
Got it. So what are the main types of commitments? Like, what do they actually have to do?
So 2 of the big ones are post-market studies, which are often these things called phase 4 clinical trials.
Oh.
And then there's REMS, which stands for Risk Evaluation and Mitigation Strategies.
REMS. Okay, so post-market studies, I mean, we all know about phase 1, 2, and 3 trials, right? Those are those before a drug is approved.
Right.
But what's the point of doing a study after it's already out there?
Well, phase 4 studies, those happen after the drug is approved.
Okay.
And they have a few really important jobs. Like, one is they can get even more data about the drug's safety.
More data. So even after all that data they collected before?
Even more. Because now they can look at a much bigger group of patients, and they can look for a longer time.
Okay. Yeah, and they can look at more diverse patients?
Exactly. Like different ages, different backgrounds, all of that.
So it's about getting the full picture, really.
Exactly. And they can also see how well the drug works for different types of patients.
Oh, right, because everyone's different.
Exactly. Like maybe different doses work better for some people, or maybe the treatment should last longer for certain groups, that kind of thing.
And I guess they can also look at really long-term effects.
Oh, right. Effects that might not show up in those shorter trials before approval.
That makes sense.
So it's all about getting more details, filling in the gaps.
So basically making sure it really works the way we think it works.
That's it. And these studies, sometimes the FDA requires them as part of the approval.
So they're not optional.
Sometimes not. But sometimes companies do them voluntarily, too.
Okay, why would they do that if they don't have to?
Well, they want to learn more about their drug.
Yeah. Maybe find new ways to use it.
New uses, that's interesting.
Yeah, could be good for business, too.
So it's a win-win. They get more info, and maybe they can sell more of the drug.
It can be. And the important thing for us is the findings from these phase 4 studies. Those can definitely lead to more changes in the drug label.
Yeah, so if they find out something new, either good or bad,
Right.
they got to update that label.
You got to update it.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's talk about REMS. That sounds pretty intense.
REMS are definitely designed to handle, those serious risks.
So this is specifically for drugs where there's like a higher chance of something bad happening.
Exactly. The FDA requires them when the risks are big enough that we need to take extra steps to make sure the benefits are worth it.
It's all about balancing the good with the bad, right?
Exactly. So these REMS programs, remember that's REMS, they're tailored.
Tailored to the specific drug.
Tailored to the specific drug and its risks.
And they can include all sorts of stuff like one common thing is medication guides for patients.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, they explain things in plain language.
Right, not all that medical jargon.
Exactly. They tell you about the warnings, the precautions, and how to use the medications safely.
And those usually come right with the prescription, right?
Right in the bag.
So you get all the info right away.
It's right there.
That's good.
RMS can also involve, like, communication plans for healthcare providers.
So making sure the doctors and pharmacists know what's up.
Exactly. They need to know all about the risks and how to minimize them.
And sometimes, it sounds like, it can even affect how the drug is distributed.
That's right. Like, for the really serious cases, there might be restricted distribution systems.
What does that mean, restricted distribution?
So, like, maybe the drug can only be given out by certain pharmacies.
Oh, wow.
Like only ones that are specially certified.
Okay.
Or maybe it can only be prescribed under very specific conditions.
So there's a lot of extra hoops to jump through.
And sometimes there are even monitoring requirements.
What does that mean? Monitoring?
So, like, the patient might need to get specific tests done
Oh, wow.
while they're taking the drug,
Okay.
to make sure they're not having those bad side effects.
So they're keeping a really close eye on things.
Really close. It's all to make sure the drug is being used as safely as possible.
Yeah, it's a balancing act for sure.
It is.
You want people to be able to get the meds they need, but you also don't want them to get hurt.
Exactly. So all these REMS, they're really important.
They sound important. Okay, so let's say a label does change, like we've been talking about.
Okay.
How do they get that new info out to everyone?
Right, to the doctors, the pharmacists, and most importantly, the patients.
Yeah, you got to tell everyone.
Communication is key. So there are a few ways they do it. One big one is these Dear Healthcare Professional letters.
Okay.
So those are letters that go straight from the drug company to the doctors, the pharmacists, everyone who prescribes meds.
So it's going right to the source, right to the people who need to know.
Exactly. It tells them about any big safety updates or other important changes to the label.
Makes sense. What else?
Then there are those updated medication guides we talked about.
The ones that come with the prescription.
Right. Those are key because they explain everything to the patient in simple language.
So it's not just for the doctors, it's for everyone.
It's for everyone. And then the FDA, they put out public announcement.
Public service announcements, kinda.
Kinda, yeah. They let everyone know about any important drug safety info.
So they might put it on their website or like send out a press release.
Exactly.
And that reaches a much wider audience.
It does. And then you've got professional societies, like groups of doctors and medical organizations.
Right.
They also tell their members about label changes.
So they might put it in their newsletter or talk about it at a conference.
That's right. So they're really trying to get the word out in as many ways as possible.
They don't want anyone to miss it.
Exactly. And all this communication, it has to be really clear.
Yeah, clear and simple, right.
Absolutely. It's got to be easy for everyone to understand, not just the doctors, but the patients, too.
Yeah, because not everyone went to medical school.
Right. Everyone needs to know what's going on.
Okay, so we've talked about why labels change, how they change, and how they get that info out to everyone. Let's look at some real-world examples.
Yeah, let's see how this works in practice.
Can you think of any, specific cases where there were big label changes that really show what we've been talking about?
Oh, yeah, different, like opioids, for example.
Opioids, that's a big one.
It is. And, over time, we've learned a lot more about the risks of opioids.
Yeah, the addiction, the overdoses, all that.
All of that. And that's led to a lot of changes in the labels.
Like what kind of changes?
Well, they've put much stronger warnings on the labels.
To make people really aware of the risks.
Exactly. And they've created REMS programs specifically for opioids.
Right, to try to make sure they're being prescribed safely.
And they've given doctors much more detailed guidance on how to manage patients who are taking opioids.
So it's really a multi-pronged approach.
It is. It has to be because it's such a serious problem.
Yeah, and we've all seen how much attention the opioid crisis has gotten.
Right. It's a huge public health issue.
So it makes sense that they would use drug labels as one way to try to address it.
They're a key tool.
What about other examples?
Oh, there are plenty. Like biologics, for instance.
Biologics, yeah, those are different from regular drugs, right?
They are. They're more complex. They're made from living organisms.
Huh.
And because they're so complex, they can sometimes trigger an immune response in the body.
Oh, so your body might think it's being attacked.
Kind of. Yeah, we call that immunogenicity.
Immunogenicity, okay.
And because of that, their labels often have a lot of specific info.
More than regular drug labels.
More details, yeah, like how to give the drug.
Like how to inject it or whatever.
Exactly, and how to watch for any immune reactions.
Yeah, those could be serious, right?
They could be. And the thing is, with biologics, new safety issues can pop up even after they're approved.
Oh, wow. So they have to keep updating the label.
They do. And they also often find new uses for biologics.
So a drug that was approved for one thing might end up being good for something else.
Right, because they're often very targeted therapies.
So they're really specific to certain conditions.
Exactly.
That makes sense. What about other types of drugs?
Well, let's talk about high-risk drugs in general.
High-risk drugs, so these are the ones where there's a good chance of serious side effects.
Exactly, even when they're used correctly at the right dose.
So they have to be really careful with those.
Very careful, and their labels are usually super detailed.
More so than other drugs.
They have a lot of info, yeah. They have clear warnings. They tell you when you shouldn't use the drug.
When it's dangerous to use it.
Right, and often they come with REMS programs, too.
Right, those extra safety measures.
All to make sure the benefits are worth the risks.
So for these high-risk drugs, the label is really important.
It's crucial. It's like a roadmap for using them safely.
This has been really eye-opening. I never realized how much goes on behind the scenes with these drug labels.
It's more complicated than people think, for sure.
Yeah, it's not just a piece of paper. It's like a living document. It keeps changing.
That's a good way to put it. It evolves as we learn more.
And all this work that the companies have to do, these post-market commitments, and all those ways they communicate the new information, that's all super important.
It's all about keeping patients safe.
Absolutely. And, just learning about all this, it makes me feel more informed as a patient.
That's the goal. It's about empowering people.
Yeah, to understand what they're taking and what the risks are.
Exactly, and to be able to talk to their doctors and ask good questions.
So we're not just blindly following orders.
Right. It's about being an active participant in your own healthcare.
I like that. So one last thought.
Okay.
We've seen how much we keep learning about a drug, even after it's approved, and people are taking it. What does that tell us about, the whole process of scientific discovery?
It tells us that science is never really finished.
It's always evolving.
Always evolving. We're always learning new things, especially when it comes to the human body.
Right. It's so complex.
It's incredibly complex, so we have to stay vigilant. We have to keep learning and adapting.
Yeah. There's always more to discover.
That's the beauty of it.
And that's what makes medicine so exciting, right?
It's never boring.
That's for sure.